The theme of today's Sunday's readings, as was introduced to us earlier before the Mass started, is about death. How depressing. In fact, that is also the story of the Gospel today. A depressing story, and yet that sadness and that depression, the crying and the wailing is suddenly stopped by the presence and the miracle of Jesus. So the theme for today's homily could very well be perhaps not death, but the secret of life. The secret of life is obedience. I will explain later. I will explain through some stories. It's so difficult to obey. You know, because inherently we are proud. Proud in the good sense of the word, and sometimes in the bad sense of the word. Kita bangga. As young people, there are many young people here. Maybe you're already on vacation. That's good. And you're here. College students especially. When we are college students, we are proud. Especially of the schools where we study in. The schools where we come from, right? Sometimes we even compete with one another. Which is the best school? It's the same everywhere. Here, where I come from, it's the same. Sometimes you can even get hurt if you wear the school's shirt. We had one school, and that school is very proud of its tradition. It has a shirt in its school color, dark blue, and it says, it's very difficult to be humble if you're a letranite. Our other school has a different color, seperti ini. It's gold. They wear gold with the same inscription. It's so very difficult to be humble if you're a Thomasian, if you're a follower of St. Thomas Aquinas. All those competing students proud of their universities. As I have said, it is so difficult to be humble. Even among nationalities, we have that. It's so difficult to be humble. There's a story, 3 nationalities were aboard a helicopter. One was a Japanese, another was an American, and the third one, a Filipino. Suddenly, there in the sky, the helicopter got into trouble. And the only solution is that they reduce the weight. Somebody has to sacrifice his life. At least 2 people have to die. They have to jump out of the helicopter. When the pilot explained to them that, the Japanese stood up, proud Japanese, and he said, "Banzai!" And he jumped out of the helicopter. A hero. The American and the Filipino looked at each other, and the Filipino said, "I will be next." And he said, "Mabuhay ang Pilipinas!" And he pushed the American out of the helicopter. We're very proud, right? You see? The same with the religious orders. You can substitute the Japanese, the American, and the Filipino to be, for example, the Jesuits, or the Benedictines, and the Dominicans. Whoever jumps out first. I am just illustrating that it is so difficult to have the secret of life, and that is obedience, because it is so difficult to be humble. Just a few hours ago, we had somebody sitting there in front of the 8 o'clock Mass, a Dominican, brother, bukan diakon, bukan Romo, but he's a full-fledged Dominican. Brother Andreas Prianto. He also stayed here at the start of his formation years. So this 8 o'clock, the 8 o'clock Mass was a Thanksgiving Mass offered for his perseverance, and he's thanking the Lord. He has become a full-fledged Dominican like us. We have the same rights in the order. For us, it doesn't matter if you're a priest or not. We have the same profession. That is what we pray for in the prayer of vocation just before the Mass, that we have more priests, but at the same time we have more consecrated men and women. That is him, a consecrated person. What makes us one is we have the same vows. And in the Dominican order, we only have one vow. Only one. Of course, you know, we have three. And that is poverty, chastity, and obedience. St. Dominic summarized it into just one. One is enough. And what is that? It is the vow of obedience. Why? Because if you are not obedient, you will not be poor. If you are not obedient, you will not be chaste either. Therefore, obedience is the highest. Why? Because it's so difficult for Satan to obey. Now you see that I am not speaking only of us Dominicans. It's for everyone. Because truly, as human beings, it is so difficult for us, for all of us, to subject our will to another. In marriage, it's so difficult to be faithful to the vow, to be obedient to the wife, to be obedient to the husband means to be faithful to the vow. To be unfaithful, therefore, is to disobey the vow, to break the vow. Satan rejoices. You see. The formula for death is unfaithfulness. The formula for death is disobedience. That is why the religious are called to help God's people signify that it is possible. That it is possible to obey. In the history of our obedience to God, that is also the history of the religious orders and even the monastic orders. Saint Benedict gathered people to be together and spend all their lives, dedicating all their lives to the monastic tradition. That is, to pray always, to pray only. That is their work. Ora et labora. Pray and work. St. Francis gathered a company, and their mission is to witness by the obedience of their lives that God cares. God cares for the sick. God cares for the dying, just like what we have read in the Gospel today. So Francis took as the model of his community radical poverty, so that they may be able to serve. He did not accept ordination to be priest, even that. So Francis, Saint Francis of Assisi, is not a priest. He is a deacon. And a deacon's role is to serve, as if to illustrate to us very clearly the charism of his order, of his great order. Saint Dominic, not to be competing with Benedict or Francis, fused the life of monasticism and the life of service. We could not enclose ourselves in our room, sadja, and just pray. We could not be Benedictines. We could not also be just all around, all over in the streets and not say the Mass. So the formula is to live both, to enclose ourselves in our rooms and study. That is our prayer. So the early Dominicans were professors in the university, up to now. That is why we teach. That is our work and prayer. And at the same time, to serve people, especially to be helped in that by brothers like Andreas. That is why we have cooperator brothers in the order, to fulfill the ministry of service. Maybe later on, when the Indonesian Dominicans grow, when more brothers are able to help, then they would be the ones to manage scholarship programs, for example, for the poor, or even administer universities and schools. We are not to be administrators, primarily. We are not to be rectors of universities even. We are to be professors and preachers. So pray for us, that we may be able to signify, show always to you, that it is possible to be faithful, that it is possible to be obedient, that it is possible to spend all our life doing just this. Just a few days ago, the other day, I was in Pontianak. It was the Despedida Mass, the final Mass of one of our Dominican fathers, Father Edmund Nantes, OP, who served as a missionary in Indonesia, a Filipino like me, for 16 years. 16 years. This is just my second year. And we're supposed to be here only for 3 years. Extendable up to 6. 6. Not that we don't love you, but it is the nature of our obedience to go and go and go. So if Romo here, the fathers here, Dominican fathers here, you can't see them always, rejoice. They are preaching. They're supposed to go. But Father Edmund Nantes, when he said goodbye to me, had red eyes. It seems he was crying. It seems he found it difficult to go. You know him. When he preaches, it's very long. It's very loud. You know what? 2 days ago, when he said his words, it's very short. It's not the Father Ed that I know. He composed a poem in Bahasa Indonesia. and I could already understand it. He did not translate it, maybe so that I will not understand. But I understood it. He was saying, everything that has a beginning has an end. And he was saying, like rivers, water flows from the river, it will end in the sea. And also, tears, when life is so sweet, will also pour out from our eyes. And it will end in sweet memories. That was his parting words to Indonesia in Pontianak, where he lived for 16 years. So I'm already practicing what I will say. Not that we don't love you, but that just like John the Baptist, he said, we must decrease, and you must increase. I am telling the absolute truth. Because in the Philippines, more and more, our seminaries are full of orang-orang Indonesia. In every stage of formation. I think in the pre-novitiate, the majority are already Indonesians rather than Filipinos. In the novitiate, the same. In the studentate, the same. We should be sad. It seems we are dying. The Filipinos, we don't have to push the Americans away. We just have to bring more Indonesians in. Later on, we won't be surprised. Indonesians will be pushing us away, just joke. Before that happens, we should go. You see how genius Dominic is? It's so difficult to be humble if you're a Dominican. The proof of the beauty of our life is that more and more Indonesians will become Dominicans. And I think you would be happy with that. Because that means we have found the formula for life. That means perhaps we have succeeded in showing how beautiful life is, how beautiful the families here are, how beautiful the church in Surabaya is. Its life is worth living for. Its life is worth writing about. Its life is worth teaching about. It's worth living for. Even it's worth dying for. Brothers and sisters, it's all here, what I have said. Right from the first reading, we are told that God did not make death. He does not rejoice in our destruction. God rejoices when we increase. Increase in what? St. Paul, in the second reading, tells us it is a growth in excellence. Excellence in every respect. In faith, in discourse, in knowledge, in all earnestness, and in the love we have for you. These two readings allow us to understand Why? Jesus was brave enough to say, no, she is not dead. She's just sleeping. And they laughed at him. Perhaps like Jesus, we can say, no, the church here is not even asleep. The church here, the families here are awake. They are alive. Yes, there's a lot of problems here and there, difficulties here and there. And yet, we know that we have found, just like the stories I have told you, just like what St. Dominic allows us to see, put our minds at the service of obedience and our will, our freedoms at the service of each other. When we do that, brothers and sisters, we have found the formula of a happy life. We have found not only the formula of how to be successful in this life, but how to be faithful, how to receive the life of God in us. May we who gather together in this Eucharist be found faithful, and may we too share that life of God with others.